Okay, there.
There we go.
Oh, perfect. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Sustaining Miami's Water webinar. My name is Maria del Mar Trejos. I am with the Miami-Dade Environmental Education Project at the Sea Level Solutions Center in the FIU Institute of Environment. And it is truly a pleasure to be here surrounded by our incredible lineup of panelists. So during this hour, we're going to go over our current challenges of sustaining Miami's water. And we'll go over some practices that you can do in your properties and yards to improve their water quality and essentially our most valuable public resource, which is water. So before I get started, I want to encourage all of you to participate in today's interactive features. So we have our polls and our Q&A, and you're going to be able to see our polls and our Q&A sessions by utilizing the Zoom features that are located in the bottom of your screen. And throughout the webinar, we will launch a few polls, so please give it a few minutes for the window to prompt on your screen. And once you see the poll click on your screen, scroll down to see all the poll questions. These are single choice and multiple choice questions. And so in order for you to select an answer, just click directly on your answer choice. So don't worry, we're not doing a right or wrong answer. So these questions won't be displayed. And at any point throughout the webinar, you can submit questions to our panelists with the Q&A feature. And if you have any tech issues or unrelated questions or comments, you can use the chat feature instead. Now that I have our IT housekeeping out of the way, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Tiffany Truxler, Director of Science at Florida International University, Sea Level Solutions Center in the Institute of Environment, and our FIU Research Associate Professor.
Thank you, Mari. Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining our program today. Today's program is presented by the Sea Level Solutions Center, as Mari mentioned, as well as the Department of Journalism and Media at FIU. And just a quick word about the Sea Level Solutions Center. It focuses on advancing science-based knowledge, decision-making, and actions for mitigating the causes and adapting to the effects of sea level rise and climate change. And our program today was made possible by a grant from the Miami-Dade County Environmental Education Program. And this is one that the purpose is to increase awareness and knowledge about environmental issues and enhance critical thinking and problem solving to make informed decisions and take responsible actions among residents and business owners in Miami-Dade County. The program addresses 4 priority areas of environmental education of the Division of Environmental Resources Management, the Water and Sewer Department, and the Department of Solid Waste Management. And they prioritize water pollution, water conservation, drinking water quality, urban forestry, recycling and solid waste management, and general environmental quality education. So thanks again for joining us today. We hope you enjoy the program. And Alyssa, to you for the quality of life poll.
Hi everyone, welcome. So we're going to be launching a poll now. Give me 1 second so I can get it for you guys. And so the way that it's going to work is you can answer the questions and you'll scroll down. You need to answer all of the questions in order to be able to submit. So it should have just popped up on your screen. The first question is, I am a student or non-student. We have some FIU folks here. Number 2, the type of business where I work is private sector, government, nonprofit, or I'm not working. Number 3, what are the 3 most important things that can determine your quality of life? Which includes health, family and friends, happiness, freedom, learning and education, religion, being outdoors, connecting with nature, my favorite, work-life balance, safety and security, good pay or job. For number 4, we have what are the 3 most important concerns you have about sea level rise and flooding. So you can put multiple answers for this. Applying science to make good decisions to address these issues, increasing threat from storm surge, impacts to property or property value, impacts on community, friends and family. Let me scroll down. Lack of awareness, no action needed to address it. Impacts to natural habitats and wildlife, exacerbation of social inequities, relocation, quite a list of things. Water contamination and public health impacts. For number 5, we have what are the 3 most important concerns you have about other impacts on climate change? Increasing heat and extreme heat, more intense storms, as we've seen here in Miami, applying science to make good decisions and address these issues, impacts on property or property value, impacts on community, families and friends, on natural habitats and wildlife, on public health, the increasing threat from storm surge, lack of awareness, and no action to address it. And then number 6, we have, what do you think are the 3 highest priority initiatives or actions that can be done to reduce these impacts of climate change and improve your quality of life? So you have increased use of renewable energy, use bonds and small increases in taxes, which has to relate with greenhouse gas emissions and finance projects, increasing city and community initiatives to help out, residents, like composting, educating about composting, eating less meat, elevate buildings and other infrastructure, update codes, planning and infrastructure, increase city or community green infrastructure, so like trees, tree canopy, vegetation, supporting low wealth communities, increasing community awareness, and moving to lower risk neighborhoods. So we'll give you guys about another minute on this. We might not need, we're at 90% already, so that's good. And remember to just press submit at the bottom. We'll give you guys a few more seconds on that. We're at 90, maybe we can make it a 95. All right, I'm gonna stop the polling here so we can quickly check out the results. So I'll share the results with everyone. I am a student, non-student, so we have these answers. You can see the percentages there, the type of business, the 3 most important things that determine one's life, quality of life, I'm sorry. We also have the 3 most important concerns about sea level rise and flooding, applied science, that's our biggest one here, as well as water contamination and public health. Then at the bottom, you can see that 48% for number 5 on other impacts was the more intense storms. I know that's on everybody's mind now this weekend. And number 6, we have increase of renewable energy. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to stop sharing the results. Mari, you can take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Alyssa. All right, so let's get started. So why is water important to Florida and Miami-Dade residents, right? Well, aside from our daily needs to maintain our bodies hydrated, Florida water is particularly interesting and very interesting. It has a rich history, to say the least. We depend on its well-being for our lifestyle, our economy, and ecology. It impacts important industries such as agriculture, tourism, retail, and real estate development. Here are some interesting facts. 90% of Florida drinking water comes from underground aquifers, supplying more than 8 billion gallons of water each day. We're very lucky to have these aquifers because it gives us relatively inexpensive drinking water. Boating in Florida is $10.2 billion industry. And in Miami-Dade in particular, nearly all of our drinking water is drawn from the Biscayne aquifer, which the Everglades help replenish, sustaining the water supply of our lower East Coast. And you'll see more on our independence of the Everglades later. So we've all seen this hydrologic cycle in middle school, but let's take a look at where our water comes from, especially in Miami-Dade. So when it precipitates, The rainwater replenishes our surface water bodies, lakes, rivers, and most importantly, our Biscayne aquifer with fresh water. Deeper down and separated by a confining layer of dense rock is the Florida aquifer. It moves slowly across the state and is usually too salty to drink without some further treatment. And in Miami-Dade, we withdraw our drinking water via wells from the Biscayne aquifer. You can see it here. And these are usually 60 to 80 feet deep. And they're supplemented by a smaller amount of the deeper Floridan aquifer. So one of the challenges of sustaining Miami's water is we are currently facing is a historical change in natural flow of water that replenishes our aquifers, the estuaries, and the Everglades. And another challenge that we're facing is the sea level rise due to climate change that is causing essentially saltwater intrusion. So our groundwater levels in superficial aquifers like the Biscayne aquifer, they can change rapidly in response to climate change, such as drought or rainfall, as well as with the withdrawals by pumping. So here you can see all like the water intrusion and salt water, and essentially how we're being able to recharge our Biscayne aquifer. All right, so what do we know already about climate change? Well, climate change, we know that greenhouse gases are rising. We have oceans are warming and sea levels are rising. And in this graphs in particular, these three graphs from the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change show the rising concentrations of the primary greenhouse gas, carbon dioxide in our Earth atmosphere, the impacts of increased greenhouse gases, which radiates heat back into our atmosphere, and then temperatures on the temperatures of the ocean, where most heat coming to the ocean is absorbed by the ocean. And so, yeah, you can see my slide. Okay, so this heat that is being absorbed by the ocean has an impact on thermal expansion of the ocean and the melting of land-based ice on sea level in the ocean. And these are some of the biggest sources of greenhouse gas in this sheet. And so we've also, I'm sure a lot of you already know what the greenhouse effect, but there are primary natural occurring gases in the atmosphere, such as like carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and water vapor, among others. In themselves, they aren't bad, right? These gases act as our global blanket. They are the ones that trap heat in our atmosphere, and they keep our Earth warm, and essentially they keep the temperature as we know it. This is what we call the greenhouse gases, which create the greenhouse effect. However, as we saw in the previous slides, the atmospheric concentration of greenhouse gases has increased largely due to human activity. And so we're basically creating a thicker blanket and causing global our temperatures to rise and essentially a climate change. So these are some of the sea level rise projections. And in the sea level projections, you can see that by 2040, sea level is projected to rise 10 to 17 inches above 2000 mean sea level. We also see that that it's going to rise 21 to 54 inches by 2070, and 40 to 136 inches by 2021. And so sea level rise in coastal zones cause flooding from frequent high tides. They push up through the ground, pushing salt water to our fresh drinking water ecosystems and aquifers. And this shows you the Florida water flow. So there is a lot of history behind all of this, but essentially saltwater intrusion of the Biscayne aquifer began when the Everglades were drained to provide dry land for urban planning and agriculture in the 1950s. And so this changes of flow has also exacerbated the impacts of climate change as well. And so here you can see how we're being able to pump our fresh water and where our salt water is coming from. And so with the sea level rise, we have in population growth, this creates basically a threat to our water supply because of course a lot of us are going to be needing this water and we'll be using it for agriculture purposes as well. And something that I find to be very interesting that we'll take a deeper look later today is nutrient pollution. So when we have the sea level rise and strong storms, all this water is essentially moving through our land, and they're picking up this nutrients and pollution. And so this oftentimes, because it's storm water, sometimes it doesn't get treated, and so this storm water goes directly into our waterways with all these contaminants and these nutrients from usually from fertilizers that are creating algae blooms. And so something that happens with climate change is that warmer waters can exacerbate the impact of nutrient runoff, accelerating this algae blooms. And so how you may be asking yourself, why is it that I see like litter and what's going on with this nutrient pollution thing? How is it really getting into our waterways? Well, on the top side of this graph, on your right-hand side, you can see how we basically have our canals and our Biscayne aquifers and basically the water flow in Miami's water. So Miami's urban water is basically managed in sanitary sewer, septic, and storm water systems, which is what you see on the top right. And in addition to original flood management treatment. And as I mentioned before, we have to take into consideration that sanitary sewers are completely different from our storm drains, and therefore we should not be treating our storm drains like if they were sewers. And so here you can take a look at what's going on with our storm drains. So sometimes debris gets in the way, and this ends up clogging our storm drains and creating additional flood. And oftentimes all this debris that we see in the street travels through the storm drains and ends up in our waterways. And so living on the edge, right? Due to high population growth, development and agricultural needs, sea level rise and saltwater intrusion, our freshwater resources around this state are indeed getting impacted. Like I mentioned, solid waste, nutrients, and other contaminants like oils, pesticides, and fertilizers enter our waterways, causing our water quality issues, public health, and other environmental impacts. And some of the economic and public effects that we're seeing is this thick muck has been observed causes several impacts to our water quality and our aquatic life, recreation and businesses, and property values. So think about it, Florida, everyone comes here for their beaches, for recreation purposes, and to see this huge algae blooms that can create a smell or may not make our waters look pretty, may push away some of our tourism. And so if with this effects, we can see tourism losses, commercial fishing, and shellfish losses and real estate losses. But not only that, we can also start seeing the impacts in our beautiful habitats and ecosystems. And red tide in particular has health effects. So if you ingest the contaminants, then you can get some illness, and then also inhalations, and you can get some respiratory irritation, and exposures can create to neurological illnesses. So essentially, too much nitrogen and phosphorus in waters, high diverse, far-reaching impacts on public health, the environment, and the economy. And with that being said, I would like to go ahead and get us started. So we have Miami's Keeper, if you would like to go ahead and get us started with your presentation.
Hi, Rachel. So now we're going to introduce Rachel.
Hi, everybody. Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Fantastic. I'm so thrilled to be here, and thank you for putting this together and including Miami Waterkeeper. I'm Rachel Silverstein. I'm the Executive Director and Waterkeeper of Miami Waterkeeper. Next slide, please. So Miami Waterkeeper is a local nonprofit, and we work on protecting the water you love. And we do a combination of community outreach, and we have several programs that are targeted at high school students, like our Junior Ambassador program and environmental leadership training, and also another example is our Thousand Eyes on Water program that trains the public to observe, document, and report pollution that they might see going about their daily lives. We also do scientific research and have been working with some of the amazing folks on this panel today, like Tiffany, doing the science and also learning from the science that has already been published to inform management decisions. And we also do advocacy work. And so I'm going to talk today about nutrient pollution and about some of the recent fertilizer ordinances that we've worked with local municipalities to pass to try to improve water quality in Biscayne Bay and to stop algae blooms. So I'll explain what all of that means. But first of all, what is nutrient pollution? We need nutrients, right? They're a good thing. That's what we've always been told. Well, too much of a good thing can be a problem. And nutrients that we're talking about here are like nitrogen and phosphorus that are very rich in fertilizers, is where a lot of people come in contact with them. And too many nutrients in Biscayne Bay and in our waterways causes a lot of problems because they're supposed to have a very low nitrogen and phosphorus naturally. So when we add nutrients to them, it does the same thing that fertilizer does. Like if you took Miracle Grow and you put it into a little kiddie pool in your backyard and left it in the sun, it would turn green, and you would get what we typically think of as an algae bloom inside of the kiddie pool. So the same thing's happening on a larger scale in Biscayne Bay right now too. And so we want to stop those algae blooms. The algae blooms turn our beautiful clear water green, they smell bad, and they can harm wildlife. They can also be harmful to humans as well. So where is some of that nutrient pollution coming from? And it's coming from fertilizers, so both agricultural, but also residential fertilizers. It's coming from sewage leaks, and it's coming from stormwater is anything, any fall on the ground that isn't absorbed into the ground and running off down a storm drain, as we heard already described. And stormwater is inherently really dirty. So all the stuff that's on the street is getting picked up, going down the drain, along with all of the plastic that's getting washed down the drain too. These chemicals and grease and oil and pet waste and stuff is ending up in the water and making it really dirty. Next slide, please. Let's see here. So, you know, we certainly have to address all inputs of nutrient pollution, as I mentioned, but really I want to look at today. Let me just, really what I want to talk about today is what we can do dealing with reducing fertilizer use. And as I mentioned, too much fertilizer getting into the water creates these algae blooms. For the first time in the last several years, we're starting to see really widespread algae blooms in Biscayne Bay, and that's causing die-offs of our seagrass. In some areas of Biscayne Bay, we've already lost over 90% of our seagrass. Thank you for switching this slide. And it's largely thought that Biscayne Bay is really at a tipping point for turning from a seagrass-dominated environment to an algae-dominated environment. And we need seagrass because it stabilizes the soil, or the sediment as we call it, and it keeps the water clean. It also stores carbon, so it's a really potent place where we can trap carbon from the atmosphere to fight things like climate change, and traps it in the soil. And it provides really important habitat for fish, especially baby fish, to live in and around. And so Biscayne Bay is so productive, which means it has so much wildlife in it, largely because of the really lush seagrass meadows that we've had. So NOAA, our National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, designated Biscayne Bay as a few years ago as one of 10 places around the country of really high economic importance and really high environmental importance that was really at a tipping point for some kind of major phase shift like the one I've described. And so Biscayne Bay was chosen as one of these places for nutrient pollution because we were on the tipping point of nutrient pollution and getting these algae blooms. So Miami Waterkeeper has been working on reducing land-based sources of pollution as part of that habitat focus area to try to avoid what we're seeing now, which is this massive seagrass die-off. So arguably it was a little bit too late to stop the seagrass die-off that really started around 2014, 2015. But it's not too late to save what's there and to act quickly to really protect Biscayne Bay. Next slide, please. So this is some data that NOAA published, or Nicole Millet's study that came out last year. And you can see this is areas where chlorophyll A is increasing. And chlorophyll A is basically, you can think of it as indicating where there's a lot of algae. And you can see where that the algae is really high, pretty close to the shore. And that's telling us that it's contamination or nutrient pollution coming from the shore, going into the waterways and fertilizing the algae that's in the water. And the Gables waterway is a key place where all the runoff from that's going into the Gables waterways ending up in the bay, and it has been causing a really long-lasting algae bloom there. Next slide, please. And so here is another study, I think an FIU study, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be wrong about that, showing that there's this macroalgae bloom outside of the Gables waterway, and this has been persisting for a number of years now and has really smothered the seagrass in that area, which you can see on the next slide. And here's a look at how our seagrass has died off around Biscayne Bay, particularly again in the nearshore areas next to where there's runoff from the land. In some places, over 90% of the seagrass is gone already, and this is just in the last few years. So stringing this all together, we're seeing high levels of nutrient pollution, we're seeing algae, and we're seeing seagrass die off happening in the same areas. That's really telling us, okay, this is being caused by nutrient pollution. And this is something that's not unique to Biscayne. And this is something we've seen happening in Tampa Bay, in Sarasota Bay, nutrient pollution that's contributing to seagrass die-offs. And once the seagrass starts to die off, it really can take a long time for the seagrass to, can you guys still hear me? I'm getting like a low internet signal. It can really take a long time for the seagrass to recover and return. But it does come back, and that's what we're seeing in Sarasota Bay and Tampa Bay now, is that decades of work on this has really really benefited the seagrass, and it's really starting to come back there now. And we're looking at having to do some of these really key policy changes and investments in limiting, again, sewage spills, septic tanks, stormwater runoff, and fertilizer use in getting into our waterways. So one of the things that we can really do about it is to control our own fertilizer use. And we have been working with the city of Miami and Melissa, who you'll hear from soon, as well as other municipalities around the region to try to get an ordinance, a model ordinance passed that does several things that both save money for municipalities and homeowners and protects the environment and doesn't negatively impact our beautiful landscaping and our lush yards. And so some of the really, and I think that on the next slide, there's more details about what's included too. So essentially in the summer in Miami, it rains so frequently that almost as soon as you've applied the fertilizer to the ground, it's rained and that fertilizer is running off, and it's almost immediately turning into nutrient pollution and getting into our waterways because it's going down a drain or it's going into a canal that's leading to the bay. So the plants aren't getting it. You're wasting time and money applying it, and you're contributing to pollution in the water. So one of the key features of this ordinance is that between June and September, we recommend not fertilizing at all. And again, your plants essentially aren't getting fertilizer during this time, so we're not saying all your plants are gonna die, but we are limiting the unnecessary pollution. Another thing you can do is to use at least 50% slow release fertilizer when you do use it at other times of year, and that will limit that'll mean that the fertilizer stays put longer, and so the plants can take it up, so it's not going down into the waterways. Our soils are already really rich in phosphorus, so you really don't need to add more phosphorus to the system. we also think you should never, no matter what time of year, apply fertilizers within about 15 or 20 feet from the waterways or storm drains. And doing all of that will really help to reduce fertilizer pollution in the water. So this is, I'm gonna go quickly here because I think I'm running out of time, but this is just a look at the counties and municipalities with fertilizer ordinances. In March, the city of Miami passed what is now the strongest fertilizer ordinance in the state. We're really excited about that, and we're really excited to work with them on the public education piece of that as well, which I'm sure we'll hear from Melissa about too, to share with people what they can do. And people are always asking, what can I do? And this is a really great and easy thing. That's really a win-win-win for everybody that you can do. We're also hoping that the county will take up this ordinance, and this will be countywide in Miami-Dade and Broward. And you can see there's a big hole right now around Miami-Dade and Broward counties and Monroe County for where there are strong ordinances, but a lot of Florida already has gone this route. And we can skip this because I already chatted about that one and this one as well. So these are some of the outreach and education materials we're putting together with the city and that Miami Waterkeeper has on our website too. So we have like videos and here's some of the materials that were recently designed in connection with the city. So the Village of Key Biscayne also passed a strong ordinance, North Bay Village, and again, we're working on, we're working with other municipalities to hopefully follow suit and to really study the effect of these fertilizer ordinances by monitoring the nutrients in the water, along with Tiffany, particularly in the Gables Waterway, and hopefully some other projects coming up soon. So I'm going to stop there because I think we're running a little over time, but feel free to reach out and get in touch. Visit our website at miamiwaterkeeper.org and follow us on social media if you have more questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel. So I'm going to be launching a shorter poll now. We just want to know how we did in teaching you guys all this information. So you should have on your screen a poll of 4 questions. The first question reads, it's a true or false question. Carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. Yes or no? Number 2, what are the sources of pollution from the land that can enter our waterways? So there's a multiple choice question. You can answer multiple answers. You have garbage trucks, stormwater runoff, fertilizers, failing septic tanks. For number 3, we have another true or false question. Clogged storm drains can cause flooding. Is that a true or false question? True or false answer. And then number 4, what does Miami's fertilizer ordinance propose? Limit the amount of fertilizer applied, promote use of slow release fertilizer, use 0% phosphorus in your fertilizer mix, enforce summer blackout periods for fertilizer application, enforce blackout periods during heavy rains and storms, and enforce no fertilization zones 15 feet away from waterways. Last answer, all of the above. So we have 50%. I'll give you guys about 30 more seconds. We just hit 60%, so let's get those answers in. Again, you have to answer all questions, scroll all the way to the bottom and press submit. I'm gonna give you guys about 10 more seconds. All right, and the poll, and I'll share the results with you guys so you can check it out. True or false question, 95% answered true. And then we have, for number 2, stormwater runoff and fertilizers. Number 3, true or false. And then for number 4, it looks like everyone figured out all of the above. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Alyssa. And so now I'd like to introduce Dr. Susan Jacobson. She's our MESA monitoring guru with the Miami Environmental Science Action Network. Susan, would you like to tell us a little bit more about what we're doing?
Yes, could you let me share the screen for a sec?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So we have a website. Hello, everybody. You see my whole desktop, don't you? I'm sorry.
Yeah, but we can see the website, so it's good.
Good. Okay. So the Miami Environmental Science Action Network website, this is at misan.miami, is where we put a lot of resources related to these webinars. You'll be able to see this webinar, a video of it after we're done. We have the last webinar here. I made a note, we have to add some of that wonderful fertilizer information that we got from Rachel today. That was amazing. So what we try to do in all of these webinars is we try to create some kind of method for people, for citizens to take the initiative to document and report back some of the things that they may see related to our webinar. So today, we're asking you that if you happen to see some problems with things like clogged drains in your neighborhood, so it could be from debris, it could be from leaves, it could be flooding because the tides are high. We have a little application where you can fill this out and send this to us, and you can get this at misan.miami/yards. It will also be on the Misan website. And we just ask your name, your email. This should point out where you are. If not, you can just enter your location. All right. Tell us if you see a clogged drain, flooding, litter, and debris, or something else. And you can take a picture and send it to us. Oh, it's not letting me scroll down easily. There we go. And tell us anything else you'd like us to know. And we're just creating a catalog of citizen reports. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing now. So if you have a chance, please use that application. Please contact us. Please visit the Misan website. We have many resources there and many other little citizen applications where you can document environmental issues in your area. Thanks.
Thank you, Susan. All right, Alyssa, would you like to introduce us to the great panelists we have today?
Yeah, so now we get to the fun discussion part, everyone. I'd like to welcome all of the panelists. We already met our awesome Rachel from Waterkeeper. We also have Joe Barrows, president of the Tropical Audubon Society. Kristen McLean, who is the co-founder of the Little River Conservancy. We have the amazing Melissa Hugh from the City of Miami's Office of Resilience and Sustainability. And last but simply not least, we have Bertha Goldenberg, who has worked with the Miami-Dade County Water and Sewer Department and is also a lead green associate. So I'm actually going to start off the discussion with you, Bertha. My first question is, what is the current condition of water supply for Southeast Florida and what is projected?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for putting this together. The best source for addressing water supply is the Lower East Coast Water Supply Plan that the South Florida Water Management District published in 2018. It covers the area of Palm Beach County, Broward, Miami-Dade, and Monroe. Includes all the major water users, such as public water utilities, domestic use, agriculture, recreational, industrial, and also power supply. The plan is based on the demands of 2016, and they are projected to 2040. In 2016, the population was estimated to be 6 million for this region, and it's expected to grow by 2040 to 7.6 million. So that's a 26% increase. And however, the water supply was estimated to be 1.7 billion in 2016, and the projected for 2040 is 2 billion. That's a 14% increase. So it's less than population growth. And a lot of that has to do with all the water conservation programs that we have implemented and we continue to implement. For example, in Miami-Dade County, in the 90s, where we're planning, when we were planning for water supply, we're using 200 gallons per capita per day. And today the planning is done with 138 gallons per capita per day. And that may seem to some like a high number, but that also includes all the industrial users and does not include tourists and non-permanent populations. So it's really a very good number. The water supply comes from all the major aquifers, like it was discussed earlier, the Biscayne, the Floridan, the aquifer storage and recovery, and also reclaimed water. To meet those 2040 demands, many users are going to have to implement projects. I want to bring two projects that were recently approved by the Board of County Commissioners for Miami-Dade County. One of them is an agreement with FPL to provide 50 million gallons per day of reclaimed water to be used for cooling their existing unit number 5. That power unit currently uses water from the upper Florian aquifer, and they're going to replace that with the reclaimed water, and then the Florian water is going to be used in the cooling canals to improve the water quality there. Also on July 8th, the Board of County Commissioners approved an agreement with Palm Beach County Aggregates for a project called the C51 Reservoir. Basically, Miami-Dade County is going to be buying water capacity from them at a cost, and it's going to be for 15 MGDs to the year 2065, and it's at a cost of $69 million. In addition to that, there are going to have to be some improvement in the conveyance system to bring the water from the north, south to Miami-Dade. That's going to be like another $10 million. And then once the system is operational, the South Florida Water Management District will be operating the system, and the county will have to pay per gallon used from the system. That's going to be approximately like $248,000 per year.
Oh, wow.
So,
Interesting. Awesome. That actually answers one of our future questions. So you answered 2 questions in one. That's great. Awesome. So now I'd like to call on Kristen. I was curious if you can explain to us the difference between a septic system and a sanitary sewer. Bertha, you can also jump in on this if you'd like. Kristen, you're on mute. It's okay.
You guys hear me now? I have a
Yeah,
double mute
awesome.
on my Zoom. Sorry about that. Yeah, so this is a really important question. I think one that's really not very well understood by most people in Miami. So a septic system is a individualized system that's attached to an individual house that handles the wastewater for that house. So the contents of toilets, showers, washing machines, and sinks go into a tank, and then the tank pumps into a series of pipes, which then keep back what's called the black matter, which is the poop and other solids that come through that system, and then disperses the gray water, which is the things that are separated from the solids, and then releases it right into the groundwater around the house. And of course, what most people don't realize is that there are thousands of septic systems in use right now in Miami-Dade around these water systems. I mean, literally thousands. And it's a real problem. The difference between a septic, of course, and a sanitary sewer system is a sanitary sewer system is where everybody's waste from their houses is pumped into a centralized set of pipes below the street in their neighborhood, and then it's removed to a centralized water filtration system, which is then managed at the county or state level to clean and purify that water and then release it. In our case, it releases off Virginia Key into the bay for the houses and cities that are attached to it. So one of the major issues as a community advocacy group that we're trying to deal with is to try to educate people about the fact that there are a lot more sewer systems around than people are aware of. And when the community gets upset about the water quality, particularly in places like the Little River, which is one of the bodies of water that we focus on really closely, improving water quality is a problem that's systemic, because in order to really improve the water quality for bodies of water like the Little River, you have to actually address a septic to sewer plan, which is very complicated and involves tax dollars and upheaval in local neighborhoods, and also the fact that as the water table rises, it creates lots of technological and engineering challenges, because the water doesn't just drain freely from these systems. And also all that stuff is just heading right for the rivers and the waterways too. So, you know, we can't really address water quality in a situation where we don't also address septic to sewer planning and implementation.
Yes. So you talked about the vulnerabilities, and then as far as how residents themselves can prepare, would you say that it's only those that have septics, or how would you generalize that?
So, you know, one of the things that's really amazing and unique about Florida is how intertwined everybody is down here, right? So my interests are intertwined with your interests, are intertwined with the developer's interests. You know, 2 streets over, who's trying to put in a major development, is intertwined with the tax and property values of anyone downstream. So even if a homeowner is not doesn't own a septic system attached to their house, if they are attached to sewer, it's in everyone's best interest in the entire South Florida, I would say all of Florida, to push for these projects, because in the long term, you know, we're all sharing the same body of water, which is what we've been hearing about today. So even if I'm not, if I don't have a septic system that is contributing to this, if my neighbor does, or the town over does, or someone upstream of me does, it affects me. Now, that's a really difficult challenge to make, a difficult challenge to kind of get everybody in the same boat and rowing, because everybody feels that they don't necessarily need to share that burden. But ultimately, in the long term, as sea level rise happens and water quality continues to be a concern, everybody needs to really try to push for it, because otherwise we're all going to be facing the consequences.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Now we're going to kind of switch gears more, towards the fertilizer ordinance. So I'd like to call on Melissa. So I was curious as to what were some of the concerns that were raised to your office, the city's Office of Resilience and Sustainability, that helped bring this to light and pass this ordinance.
Firstly, per our city's NPDES permit, we have to pass a similar ordinance. So it was kind of mandated, but we really wanted to go above and beyond what the status quo was, and bring Miami up to par, and hopefully be a leader for the South Florida region. Because as Rachel said, not many municipalities down our side have passed something similar. And we were motivated by wanting to pass an ordinance that was very protective of Biscayne Bay, because we recognize its environmental and economic value. And beyond that, the ordinance and passing something of this caliber aligns very well with a lot of resilience and climate ready and strategic plans that we have either put forward or are part of. So our climate ready plan, Resilient 305 strategy, our city strategic plan, and also the regional climate action plan. All of those had goals or objectives or actions that aligned well with us passing something, an ordinance like this.
Okay, good. That's good to hear. So Rachel, bringing you back in, so you talked to us about some of the best management practices, but one of the things that we wanted to know was, or what the public wanted to know was, what are the alternatives for fertilizer? I guess in a nutshell, just like, and also Joe will be talking to you right after about plant alternatives. So just to keep that in mind.
I'll leave the plant piece to Joe then.
Yeah.
But some of the alternatives for fertilizer. So it's not that we're recommending never using fertilizer. It's just thinking about the timing of the fertilizer application and what type of fertilizer you're using it and where you're applying it. So in terms of timing, we recommend, again, never applying between June and September when it's too rainy for fertilizers. And then in other times of year, never to apply it so close to waterways where it's going to get into the waterway before the plants can take it up. So that's not applying between about 15 or 20 feet of the water, if you're on the water, or if you have a storm drain nearby, not applying within about 15 or 20 feet of a storm drain, because the storm drains, as we know, are connected to the canals and the bay. It's also great to have like a barrier between where you're applying stormwater and the waterways of plants, which I'm sure Joe is going to talk about too. And then we recommend finding a fertilizer that doesn't have phosphorus in it. Again, our plants in Miami really don't need phosphorus because we already have very phosphorus rich soil. In fact, that's why we mine phosphorus in Florida, because there's so much of it in the soil. And to use about 50% slow release fertilizer in your fertilizer mix, and that prevents the fertilizer from, coming out in a big gush when there's a rain. So a lot of it will stay on your property. You can also you know, use native plants, as Joe's going to talk about, that don't need fertilizer. And you can use compost or organic fertilizers that don't stay in the environment for such a long period of time, but they'll break down faster, and they won't cause so much harm to our waterways.
Awesome. Thank you. And now for our plant expert,
Well,
Joe.
first of all, thank you very much for having me and Tropical Audubon Society represented here on this wonderful panel. And thank you, Rachel. She actually had a great slide earlier that showed the waterway, and right along the waterway was a row of native plants. I think it was muley grass, and that was just a great example of placing plants near the waterway, and native plants that, what the point is here is that they require little, if any, fertilizer. And that's basically my role here today. And at Tropical Audubon Society, we try to impress that on our members and the community by having native plant sales. These native plants provide a wonderful backdrop to your garden. Definitely can be used throughout, mixed with a gardener's favorite plants. But what's great about them is they really require little to no fertilizer. These are plants that are native to our South Florida region. They have adapted to heavy rains in the summer and no rains in the winter. And as I'm sure many of our panelists and yourselves know, you try to dig a hole in South Florida, you're going to run into rock quickly. Plants are used to not having a lot of organic material around them. They're used to our alkaline soils. Again, no need for phosphorus. They are plants that, once established, will require no water. Like I said, little to any fertilizer, and actually little maintenance. So it really is making your life easier as a gardener, for your yard. And it really creates a wonderful, wonderful environment for our birds, butterflies, bees, and wildlife that inhabit and migrate through South Florida. It provides like I said, an environment where, as a gardener, you can be quite proud of it. Watch these plants flower, grow, enjoy the wonderful scents that they bring out. A lot of people just don't realize how wonderful our native plants are. And then watch the butterflies just float through the native plants, and then again, the birds that use it. So there's a whole long list. We could have a whole seminar on native plants.
If anything, we can use it as we can connect and get those resources so we can put it on our website. That way attendees can reach out to those plant lists. The other thing I wanted to ask you, Joe, was what exactly is monoculture? I know that you had mentioned that to me privately, and I wanted the public to hear about that.
As you drive through neighborhoods, you'll see way too many examples of monoculture. And the first example is just a St. Augustine lawn. That is the lawns that we see in all of our homes are a monoculture of one species. They're going to be supporting very few species, that is, very few bees, insects, butterflies. Having a mixed culture of plants would be much better. Another example would be the hedges that we see, such as ficus hedges and these new clusia hedges. That all is a monoculture. It's a group of one species.
My dad has that. I got to tell him something.
Yeah, we all have it in some respect. I do have a little bit of a lawn, but what can we do about that? Well, we can try to make our lawns a little less. Take a look at what you use your yard for. Are we actually playing a football game out in front? Well, you might want more of a yard, but if we're just sitting out there, you may want to try to decrease the lawn. Another thing to do is look at your hedge that you have in your yard. Is it ficus? Is it one of these monocultures? You see the gardeners out there every week having to cut this and trim this. In my yard, I've created a mixed hedge of all native plants. It creates just as thick of a hedge. It has different textures of leaves that are quite beautiful. Each plant is flowering at a little bit different time, again, attracting different types of birds and butterflies and insects. They're all using this together. It creates a habitat rather than a monoculture, which may provide a little, but a mixed hedge or a mixed lawn even will provide much more.
That's good. So now we know we can get creative with our natives.
Absolutely.
I didn't mean that for it to rhyme. So Melissa, I want to bring you back to ask you about the enforcing of the fertilizer ordinance and what the city is doing for that.
So going into this, we knew that enforcing was going to be difficult, and so we built in in our plan, we built in outreach and extensive outreach and education, because we feel like the best way to push this type of ordinance forward and this type of change in behavior forward is to educate people on not just the requirements of the fertilizer ordinance, but why it's important to protect our water quality, the intrinsic value that it has to Miami and to our economy. And to our fisheries. The ordinance does have some teeth, so there are fines associated with violations of the ordinance, and that's for commercial and residential applicators. And then also on the commercial side, because there's a little bit more work that commercial applicators have to do in getting a Florida fertilizer license, they have to present that upon getting their business tax receipt. So there's a couple mechanisms that we have in place, but our main push, because we know it's difficult to enforce, is to just do a lot of extensive education and outreach.
Awesome. And then the last question, it was also to Melissa, anything on septic vulnerabilities, what the city's trying to do to incorporate pushing some of that out, mitigating against that, I'm sorry.
For septic, so a lot of the cities on sewer actually, and you know, our sewer system does need upgrading and does need some retrofitting, but as far as working on the septic that we do have, it's a matter of getting funding and pushing you know, at the county and the state level to get resources allocated to transfer the septic to sewer. And it's about education as well, as I mentioned before, educating homeowners on the value of transferring to sewer. A lot of people that are currently on septic are resistant to the change. So education, outreach, and also resources and funding to be able to help to do that, because it's an expensive transition.
Awesome, perfect. So that wraps up our Q&A. I want to thank the panelists so much for all your expertise and your knowledge that you've poured out on us. We are going to now run, Mari, I think we're running the satisfaction survey now. You want to take it away?
Absolutely, and thanks again, everyone, for giving this incredible talk. So we're going to go ahead and do this last quick poll, but I want to, while we launch this poll, I wanted to give you guys a heads up. We do have a sign-up form if you want to participate in future citizen science events, and you'll also be able to watch this webinar recording on the MISAN website that Dr. Jacobson was showing us earlier today. So you can use your mobile device, or if you have a camera, you can scan that and it will take you directly to a web link. And then that would be the form we can be contacting you for our next event. And the next thing I wanted to show you all is, if you want to learn a little bit more about the program that we're doing with the environmental education grant at FIU, feel free to, you know, log into this website and have a look. And you can also contact us for any future collaborations as well. So that pretty much wraps up our webinar. Thank you for everyone who voted, and let's see how we did. High five, everyone. They liked it. Awesome. Great. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us, and we hope to see you very soon.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. And thank you, panelists.
Thank you.
Have a great one.
Thanks.
Everyone.
Thank you.